thanks for joining this AXA Week For Good special edition on water. So I am very pleased to be virtually connected to you guys and physically to our colleagues here. And we are super lucky to have great speakers, actually virtually and physically as well, from all around the world. So from Belgium, from Ecuador, Daniela, from Spain with Juan Anton, and from France, we'll get new joiners coming soon. So I guess no need to convince you on the importance of water and on the fact that we can all act as corporate citizens. So we have quite a busy agenda. So I will cut the intro short. I guess it will be a lot of interesting question debates, and at the end of the day, at the end of the conference, there would be a specific time for Q&A for each and everybody who wants to ask questions to our speakers. So without further ado, I will give the mic to you, to our first speaker, to you, Juan Anton. So actually, you are one of our sustainability ambassadors, so from AXA Partners in Spain. So thanks for joining, and let's get started.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, thank you for letting me be part of this event to introduce this interesting topic. I want to explain you that I live in Barcelona in a town called Montgat, and I want to explain you my experience. In the last 3 years, we are having a significant reduction of water in the reserves of Catalonia, and the drought, it is quite important, you can see in the images. This year in February, the government declared a state of emergency due to the drought. The water reservoirs were below 16% of their capacity. And the problem, it was so serious that they have created a commission in order to follow the actions, the actions that were put in place. Some actions that have been taken were limit of water consumption for population less than 230 liters by person a day, a limit of water in industry with reductions of 50%, and agriculture of 40% reduction. And there are some other aspects like public sources of water are turned off, irrigation in gardens, in public and private green areas. The streets could not be clean, also etc. So huge impact in our city. In the last 2 months, April, May, the measures and the last rains has helped us to recover levels of 25% of resources in the reservoirs of water. And we changed the declaration to exceptionality level 3 of criticality. But the water are not the only impacts that we are having today. We have also all the global impacts like the increase of the temperature in the Mediterranean Sea and extreme climate with the stronger storms. For example, the last one that we have, it was the storm Nelson. And I would like to share with you one personal experience that I had. With my son, I normally used to go to the beach, and we play in the beach, and we made sand castles. And when we went to the beach after the storm Nelson in April, and we saw that the beach has disappeared completely in our village, my son told me, what has happened, Daddy? And with a special shine on his eyes, I saw something that was broken on him, and he told me, what are we going to have again the beach back at home? In that moment, I saw for the first time the frustration on her eyes, and I felt the weight in my conscience of the responsibility. I understood that the commitment for the future it is today. Storm Nelson in Catalonia has beat the coast, and more than 25 meters in some places have been lost, and between 50% and 30% of the sand of the beaches in Barcelona area have disappeared. Probably many of the spots that I saw in my life, I will never see back again. And probably I will never have the chance again to play with my son in the Montgat beach, making sand castles. And we are here now, and we need to make things to help the future and to make our children have a better future on this planet. So that's why I'm here today, to share this experience. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Juan Anton, for this striking testimony. I guess the picture is quite telling everything by itself. So hopefully the water table in Catalonia will fill up, in the coming weeks, hopefully again. So thanks again. Now let's move to the second part with you, Christelle. So I have the pleasure to welcome Christelle Castet from AXA Climate. So today we need your insights on, okay, what are the key challenges that we are facing on water, and can you give us some ideas on what, I guess, are these big challenges?
Thank you, Mathieu, for the invitation, and hi, everyone. So to start the presentation, I wanted to reiterate why is water important. So obviously, water is part of us. It makes up 60% of the human body, but it's also used in or usage for drinking, but also manufacturing goods. It's also used for recreation. It's used in agriculture to produce crops and beef and fish. It's used as well in energy. I give here a few examples of renewable energy. The obvious one is hydropower, but we use actually water even to build microchips that go into things like solar panels. And then some key figures that I thought were striking when I prepared this talk. For instance, 2 billion people on Earth are not having access to drinking water, to fresh water. You also have, on the opposite side of the spectrum, people like us who buy a pair of jeans, and a pair of jeans is actually using a lot of water. It's about 6,000 to 10,000 liters. Then for the agricultural sector, it's actually the water that is being used on land is mostly going towards growing crops and agriculture. 70% of the water is used for crops. And then another fun fact, I hope you're thirsty, but actually for a pint of beer, you actually need 168 liters of water to make that. So where does this, how much water are we talking about? How much water is on Earth? So I have this little graph to show that actually only 2.5% of the water on Earth is fresh water. Out of this 2.5%, a lot of it is stored in ice. So 68% of that is stored in ice, so not really easily drinkable. So out of all this fresh water, only 1.2% is surface fresh water. And then when you decompose it, you realize that only 0.01% of water on Earth is actually easily accessible in rivers, lakes, and even swamps. So we're talking about a tiny, tiny bit of water that we are able to access easily. Now, the question is, how do we measure this water and the state of water? So scientists have come up with a concept called planetary boundaries at the Stockholm Resilience Center back in 2009 to try to understand how we're doing in different Earth components to know if we're still in a livable habitat. So this planetary boundary concepts is actually a measure between what is considered as a livable Earth and another system where it's harder to strive. And for water, they actually decompose this system into freshwater change into blue water and green water. And I'll go into these two details next. But what I wanted to show is that in the planetary boundaries, it's not just about water. It's about all these systems on Earth that help humans thrive. And the water system is very much connected to other ones. So water is connected to climate. Water is connected to biodiversity. It's actually connected to something we don't think as much, but to land system change. So for instance, deforestation. Forests actually are a way to extract water from the soil and transpirate it in the atmosphere. So all these are very much connected with each other, and I'll go back to it a little bit later. Now, how are we doing compared to, the concept of green and blue water. So the blue water is the obvious one. It's the water we can see on land. So it's the lakes, the river, and also the water that is stored and flowing under the ground. The green water is the water we don't see, so it's the water in the vegetation, in soil, and in vegetation and atmosphere as well. So it's the water we don't really see, and there are ways to measure the state of these two limits, to these two planetary boundaries in one. It's the root zone moisture. So here in the figure you can see the trees, but I wanted to also represent the atmosphere where we can see the fog a bit, and it's probably the trees that are evapotranspirating the water. So the root soil moisture is important for to measure the green water. And then for the blue water is the state of the river, so the stream flow that will be measured. So how are we doing with regard to this planetary boundary of freshwater use? Actually, since the pre-industrial era, these two limits have been reached and also surpassed. Today, we have both surpassed both limits of blue and freshwater. These are the figures, actually. So the percentage is the percentage of land surface where you have seen perturbation in the blue or green water. And so now I wanted to just check, so how are we influencing? What are the impacts? How are we modifying this planetary boundary? So what is it that we're doing? How is climate change, first of all, impacting water? We're impacting the water cycle with climate change. Here is the representation of the water cycle. So you can see water in different forms. You have the ice, you have the water in the atmosphere as water vapor, you have the water on land, in lakes, and under the ground. One of the impacts of climate change on the water cycle is that climate change is melting a lot of ice, and also warming up the ocean. And both components of melting the ice and warming up the oceans are contributing to sea level rise. It's about the ice, the melting of the ice is almost 50% of the reason why sea level is rising. The other 50% is the thermal expansion of the ocean. So it's the temperature of the ocean that's increasing. The ocean takes up more space. So both of these things are creating sea level rise. And this sea level rise, back to the previous the previous talk, sea level rise is also impacting the coastal erosion and the disappearance of the beach, for instance. Another impact is that a warmer atmosphere is actually can hold more water vapor. Thank you. So when you have 1 degree more in the atmosphere, you can hold 7% more water vapor. So what does that mean, more water vapor in the atmosphere? Actually, water vapor is a greenhouse gas. So more water vapor in the atmosphere is additional temperature increase on Earth, additional global warming. So there is this positive feedback loop that when you increase air temperature, you increase water vapor, you increase temperature. What is the consequence of this much additional water vapor in the atmosphere is that it can precipitate more. So one of the impacts of this feedback loop is that you'll have additional rainfall and leading to probably floodings. Another illustration of this impact on the water cycle is the extreme precipitation change. So if you can click for a 2 degree temperature change, you will see this much percentage of extreme rainfall on land and on the ocean. And this is because you will have more water vapor in the atmosphere that the extreme precipitation will increase. And another impact, the last one, is the droughts. So you have drought condition, dry condition, for instance, in Catalonia, because it's in this region, in the Mediterranean region, where we will see more frequent droughts. It's about twice as many frequency of the droughts are multiplied by 2.4 in a 2 degree warming scenario. So now climate change is not the only problem, actually. Another big problem is our usage of water. We consume sometimes in certain locations more water than what is available. And I'm representing here the water stress, water scarcity map from WRI, and it shows how much water we consume over the amount of water that is available. So all the red plots area on the map are the area where we consume more water than the amount of water available. So we consume too much water. A problem is that for instance, when we take up too much water from aquifers, so underground, it takes time to replenish these aquifers. So this, the rate at which we consume water, it's sometimes too fast. Another problem is that we pollute a lot of the water. There is actually, scientists found some microplastic in the cloud, in the droplets that are in the clouds. So now it rains plastics. It's not the only pollutant, unfortunately, in water, but it's one interesting message. And then the water scarcity, when you look at this map, actually, the humans, oh, sorry, it was the previous one, but humans will be consuming more and more water, and the water demand will increase by 30 to 50% by 2050. And just to kind of conclude, I was talking when I showed you the planetary boundary concept that things are interconnected. What is important is that our human system is very much linked to climate, that is very much linked to the environment and ecosystems. Ecosystem water is part of the ecosystem. So if this interconnection is quite important when you think about adaptation and when you want to have a positive impact, because having one positive impact on one of these parameters will have positive impact on the others. So that's a positive message to keep in mind. If you improve climate, you will improve water. If you improve pollution, you will improve water and the human health. So things are very much interconnected. And in the last slide, I won't go through all these adaptation method or reduction of our footprint methods, because we'll talk about it during the roundtable, but there are many ways to improve our relationship with water. And to conclude, I just wanted to, if you need more information on planetary boundary, I wanted to link this podcast on planetary boundary where we interviewed a researcher, Nicolas Philippot, and it's a 20-minute podcast in French, unfortunately, but you can scan the QR code. Thank you.
Thank you, Christelle, and I'm glad you introduced this planet boundary concept. I guess it's not as known as we could believe, I guess, in our ecosystem. So unfortunately, this pressure on water is there. So well, it's about pedagogy and as you said, so a call for action to everybody. So thanks, and you are more than welcome to step for the roundtable. So now, joining on stage, I will welcome Anne to come with us physically and virtually. I would welcome Daniela. So I will read my notes just not to make mistakes, you know, because I guess it makes sense. So Anne, you're a professor, a renowned water specialist from the VUB University, awarded by the AXA Research Fund from the AXA Chair on Water Quality and Global Change, and kudos to our friends from the AXA Research Fund in the room. And Daniela as well, so you have a PhD in hydrology from the Cornell University. And you are like working at the University of San Francisco de Quito from Ecuador, and your main interests are like rivers and Amazonia, and I hope I haven't said wrong stuff, but apology for that. I try at least to introduce you. So thank you both for joining, and I guess my first question will be to you, Anne, and maybe we need to give you a mic, yes. And could you please tell us, I guess, is there any relation between the quantity and the quality of the water? I guess it's a very large question, but I guess I'll start from here.
Thank you for the question, and I'm very happy you pose it, because water quality is very important and also very linked to water quantity. Because if you have, for instance, less water in the rivers, then you also have less water that can dilute. And in many rivers, we get wastewater, for instance, so it's a constant pollution source going to the river. So if you have less water in the river, then of course you have less pollution and the concentrations will go up and cause many problems. Another relationship we can see, for instance, in salinity, and then definitely rivers when they come nearby the sea. Many of these rivers, they have a tidal pattern and they are in contact with the sea, and you have intrusion of the sea naturally. But if you have little flow in the river, then the intrusion of the salinity will go much deeper. And one example we can see, for instance, in the Po River in Italy, that many ecosystems and also fauna like deers and wildlife depends on the fresh water of the river. But during the drought, the salinity was really intruding into far too deep, and they had to bring fresh water to the wildlife because they could not drink from the river anymore. In the other extremes, there's also a link. If you have floods, then you may have massive amount of sediments and pollution going to the river. In very extreme examples, for instance, in the floods in 2021 in Belgium, several of the wastewater treatment plants were destroyed. So the situation was going back 30 years. So all the efforts that were done to improve the river were somehow destroyed in one event.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Daniela, you would like to complement that point on the quantity and quality of water?
Yes, thank you. And what I'm saying is totally true, and it makes sense to think that, as Kristen was saying before, Christelle, sorry, we have this little amount of fresh water that we can use, right? And within that, we also have the water cave, the glaciers, and we have groundwater that is not easy to have. But if you think on the Amazonia, for anyone that has this idea of this frondose area of trees covered with tons of rivers, which is amazing because it's a specific biome. Just thinking of that. We recently had in the Amazonia this drought, and you were able to see, I don't know if you guys see in the news, people experiencing severe drought and not having no access to water at all. And that matches with what Anne was saying, that even when you have drought also, your systems are not able to clean by itself, or at least process everything that we throw on them. And in the case of the Amazonia, we had a lot of small rivers and small streams drying out, and people that had to their drinking sources on them were experiencing water scarcity in a biome that has an amazing amount of water throughout the year.
Yeah, I guess we heard about it, but it's a different thing to live it. In Paris, we have this heavy rain, I guess, with an impact on the droughts, and the bees can just, go from flowers to flowers. I guess not the same impact. Now, since you have the mic, Daniela, so a question to you. So how can we balance human and, the weather, human and ecosystem needs in terms of water system, with our water resources, sorry?
Yes. So one of the things that we are more concerned now is that we think about water resources because we have to manage them to provide, to supply to humans. But we have also lost this connection with the aquatic ecosystems and where these water resources come from. So one of the ways that we try to promote this access to water resources is also about the responsibility. And as Christelle was showing, we are using too much water for everything. And so we need to also consider these ecosystems to protect them and to allow them to continue providing us these services. And in our cases, several of the water uses like hydropower are trying to go that way in permitting some rivers to continue their functions after they process. So we have different type of infrastructure that just run of the river, for instance, that allowed the river to continue as they produce electricity. But we also have these big reservoirs across the globe, and they dry up rivers downstream. So if you think big rivers that are all of a sudden changing their status from being an amazing river doing incredible functions to nothing and becoming just this stagnant water trying to do something that was in their memory before. So that's altering the system radically, and we are promoting environmental flows, proper ways to, and if we can at least leave some rivers flowing freely, so we can have all other ecosystem services. And we also have to address the fact that we don't have enough water. We are surpassing the freshwater limits, as Christelle showed, and we don't have enough efforts to cover that. So we have to do all the small ones in protecting ecosystem and also in promoting infrastructure that is target to maintain either rivers or at least the lake and functions in other systems.
Thanks, Daniela. So now I will move back to you, Anne, and to your research, I guess. We are super interested to hear about a bit more of what you're doing, and can you tell us why actually modeling is key in your research, and what sits behind this?
Thank you. So modeling is important because in models we gather the relationship or understanding of the system. We already saw the hydraulic cycle. It's something that we all understand, but we see that it's also changing. And to know how it's changing and how we can react on it, we need to understand it. And then further, we can put this understanding in models so that we can also see how this will evolve towards the future. And this is very important also in decision making, so that we can inform the policymaker or the administrators in what are the main problems, what are the relationships. For instance, you have lakes or reservoirs that are getting empty. The first thing you have to know is, why is this? Is this climate change or is this human interaction? And in most of the cases, it's both. But you have to understand what is the role of each of the different drivers. So, and that's something that we can study, but definitely also we can derive from models. And if we have this understanding, we can go towards the future. Not only how climate change, land use change may have an impact, but also solutions. Some solutions may have a bigger impact than others. Most of the solutions cost money. So it's important to have an idea of their impacts, and there also models can play a role.
And is there any way that we as individuals could contribute to this? I mean, beyond the corporate thing, corporate world, or is there any good way to help you on this one?
From AXA?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I was very fortunate to have the AXA chair. So that gives me the financial opportunities to really make a change in my research, because we are now building a global water quality model on a high resolution. This is something that takes lots of efforts, and you cannot do it with a small amount of money. You really need like a bigger program. So I'm super happy with that. But then also in collaboration, I think we have the same concerns. We are looking at hydroclimatic risks from a more scientific point of view, but I can imagine also AXA is looking at hydroclimatic risks from also commercial and then insurance point of view. And I also think that we can also collaborate, potentially also exchanging some information. You probably also have an idea where in the world there's more events happening or where there's a higher risk. We also have some ideas from our models. It would be also interesting to see to what extent we can learn from each other from a completely different angle, but looking at the same problems.
Yeah, actually, it was not in my head, to be honest, and before actually you came, I think it would be interesting to deep dive, and as AXA partners, as you understood, we're like in 25 countries, so maybe there could be some interconnection, I guess, to build quality. Coming back to you, Daniela, so, we heard about a weird concept, or flying rivers, so, I'm just wondering what are flying rivers, and can you tell us a bit more about your work on nature-based solution? I guess nature can help, and this could be super powerful, I guess.
Thank you for the question.
Yes,
and we also.
That's fine.
Sorry.
We'll come back to you. And I was born with Daniela, but that's fine. Don't worry. Yeah, don't worry.
No worries then. Yes. So one of the things, as Anne was saying, modeling is a very useful tool. And actually, all the the information that we know now, and we can integrate, as also she was saying, into a global perspective and global decisions, comes from models, because we cannot analyze specifically one site and think about this is how my site works. It has a connection with everything, as also Christelle was saying. So in terms of the flying rivers, it's very interesting that in the Amazon, we have this behavior of the evapotranspiration that is not only following the cycle, but also having its own path on the cycle. So it's incredible to see that we have this amazing and huge concentration of water in evapotranspiration from the forest, moving in a way that also that behaves like a river, and it moves in a way that goes to different sites where it's supposed to rainfall and precipitate. But it's showing us how this the cycle actually works and how it moves. So how we depend on other sites, as you probably know, and Christelle can contribute here, because we have different pressures around the planet and the ocean, and different concentrations on our patches of forest. The wind and everything will move according to this. But within the Amazon, we have, even in the Amazon, that is this biome full of forest that we think it's completely full of forest, we also have differences in forest concentration, let's say, in density. So these rivers are going to move in this way. So they're going to meander like they do in the ground, but we can see only this by on a global scale. We don't see them if you're within the Amazon. Is like you're trying to see the forest when you are within the forest, right? So these rivers are very important because they're going to move according to the pressure near in the ocean and in the Andes. So we have a responsibility in Ecuador, for instance, to protect the Andean Amazonian part, because that's the part where you're going to have all this effect of the rivers going this way and precipitate to feed all this system in the headwaters. So in the headwaters, you will have all the water and all the solutes and everything, all the sediments coming from the Andes from the volcanic area down the rivers, and feeding all these very productive and fertile valleys, and giving us this amazing diversity that we have downstream. So these rivers are going to be the resource that we are holding to know and understand the relation with the forest. And that takes me a little bit into why we can, if we understand this and this concept that it comes from the hydrological cycle, right? And we put it in practice, we can think that how much it means to protect the forest, to have the forest and a standing forest, and to have forest in areas and plant trees in areas where we need to have them, because not everything is like that. Like in the headwaters of the Amazon, we have a different ecosystem. We have like the Páramo that is more like a tundra. So you don't have forest there. So you're not gonna reforest, let's say, or plant trees over there. But that takes me a little bit into the area of what we're trying to push into people and the decision makers, as Anna was saying, because this ultimately gonna translate in whatever these stakeholders take into practice, right? And so if we tell them that this is a way how nature works, so this is your solution to have this following condition that protects at least some of the floods that you're experiencing, because you're not prepared to have your crops flooded in a season that we're supposed to be a little bit just dry or some rain. So we are trying to use a little bit of this information for them and for stakeholders, and also for local communities. You know, the Amazon has a high population of indigenous people, and most of them are pretty related to the ecosystem. They understand totally how it works. We come up with terms that they already understand, and they can tell us how the system is going to behave downstream, because they see how the sky is, the clouds are building up in some other area. And this knowledge that they have, we are trying to direct to measurements and encouraging a little bit more into getting this data, so we can contribute to global models like Anne is creating, but using this information to tell them how we can assess more our system into using the nature. So using small ponds to allow infiltration, attenuate the peak of the flow. We can use also these ponds to small retention ponds to have some other services like creating a small, having a little bit of aquaculture, but just for one part of the season. And it works in the same way as these ponds dry out, and then the fish can go to other sites and stuff like that. So we can combine a little bit of things, and it's difficult because we have different realities in the cities. We have gray infrastructure, and now we have to move with them into ponds that are gonna retain all these peak flows that from the impervious area that it's gonna flood some areas if we don't reduce that velocity and things like that. Yeah.
And do you want to compliment, or shall I move to the next question?
No, I fully agree with the importance of nature-based solutions and how important it is also to do it together with the local stakeholders and the communities so that there is like a joint agreement of how to move forward. So I fully agree.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe last question, I'm conscious of time, and maybe Christelle, you can start. So I guess, you discuss about this water cycle and how we can regenerate, I guess, this water cycle. So is there any, how can we balance all these ecosystems, the needs from a human perspective? So can we, how can we make this work, basically?
So there are many ways where we can use nature-based solution to help restore, as you two mentioned, the ecosystem and help the climate together, because things are so interconnected. There are very much a lot of positive way to regenerate. And like one example is when you restore, for instance, the ecosystem like a forest, then you help capture carbon dioxide, which will help in the long term reduce greenhouse effects. And then you will also recreate some sort of local water cycle where those new trees can store some water in their roots and then also evaporate water in the atmosphere, and that will recreate a positive environment for even people and vegetation to strive. So that's one of the examples, but I will let my colleagues complement the answer.
Yeah, let's take one example, maybe each with you, Anne, and one with you, Daniela, before we close.
Yeah, continuing on this, nature has a regulation function. The forests have a regulation function with the vapor that they also produce. There is rain and elsewhere, but very important are also the wetlands. They have a regulating function, for instance, in flood protection, and we see that all over the world. The wetlands have been degrading, and that's also one of the reasons that there is a lot more impact of flooding, because people are living in not necessarily at the best place anymore, but they also have a very much big regulation and purification, so they purify. So we also see in countries, for instance in Uganda, where they had many wetlands, but too many have been degraded, that they end up in problems that the rivers that normally were giving water for drinking water production now are not giving water of enough quality for drinking water production. And we see that there is a very big interest in these countries to reinstore wetlands to solve the problems. Very often it's always too late when you see that nature has a function. You only see that it has an importance when it's not there anymore, and then it's too late.
Thanks. Daniela, any last call on this one?
Yes, I agree with Anne and Christelle, and I think because we work pretty much with water, our idea basically goes in how, like Anne is saying, how important is water once we don't have the functions and the services they provide us. In all these ecosystems that we have, are there for a reason. So most of the wetlands, and we have wetlands in the high Andes that are called turberas, which are incredibly sink of carbon, and they absorbing and it's going to be incredible, the sources, because the information, because the data shows that it absorb more than the rainforest. But the problem is that the highlands in Ecuador, for instance, are very fertile. So everybody drains them to use the soil. And now we have all this carbon going back to the atmosphere. So we're trying to restore, because they also provide water downstream. So making the connection to have that services, that ecosystem functions that used to provide them water, their communities and stakeholders are trying to see which is better. It takes a long time, but we know how it's working, and also going with that concept into the cities where we can attenuate the floods. That's one of the things that Anne was saying. That's pretty much one of the problems, that people see it, and once it's there, everybody asks themselves why we let this happen. And it wasn't that simple, but it was a simple concept that we need water to have space to move and reduce their velocity. So it was pretty much what happened before we start impervious in everything in the cities. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, ladies, for your inputs. I think all these interdependencies are quite complex, but at least I hope in your heads it's a bit clearer, so in mine it's clearer. So thanks for that. You're welcome to stay with me. Now welcome our friends from Hydro, so Valentin and Mathieu. From research to action, there is one slide. There will be 3 slides actually. So welcome on stage, guys. And the idea now is to deep dive a bit, how we can contribute individually on this water challenge. Over to you.
Thank you for your invitation. I think that we've seen that water is a concerning issue for our future, and that we have to rethink our usages to be more resilient towards this resource. For that, action can be done at 3 different levels. Firstly, governments can have an impact on the water resources by investing in nature-based solutions, as Christelle and Daniela explained before, by using new taxation methods for water. That's what French government did in this year in Toulouse and in Lyon. In Toulouse, they implement water taxation methods that is evolving according to the season, and in Lyon, they implement water taxation methods that is evolving according to the amount of water you consume. So this is also a solution that can be used to reduce the consumption of individuals. Also, governments can choose to fight against leaks in water pipes. You have to know that 1/5 of water is lost in water pipes in France. So this is a huge amount, and action can be done to reduce our consumption on this resource. Also, at another level, companies can have a role to play toward water with the water resource. They can notably choose to choose more ethical and more responsible suppliers. They can rethink their business model to consume less water, and they can educate their collaborators, as AXA is doing today with this conference. And finally, individuals have a role to play, and Valentin is going to explain it to you.
Thank you. Well, here you have one word: water footprint. Water footprint, what is it? Is it maybe carbon footprint? You sum all the water you need for your different usage, direct usage and indirect consumption too, to buy your food, your manufacturing goods, the water you use every day. And all of this, if you sum this, you have the water footprint, which is your impact on water in some way. And why is it important? It's because you cannot reduce what you cannot measure, and through measuring it, and we want to give you some advice on it, you will have some insight on which part of your consumption is the biggest part, and on which you can act first. Well, you can split water footprint into 2 parts. The first part is direct consumption. It's thing that it's the most intuitive. You have tap water in your house, in your flat. It's around 150 liter per day in European country, but it vary a lot between different countries in the world, and it's more about 350 in the US and around 50 liters per day in India, for example. Just to give you some big picture, the big part in your direct consumption is shower and toilet, and can represent around 60% of your daily consumption. The other part, which is much bigger, in fact, it's indirect consumption. And Christelle explained it a little bit with example, and we will give you some insight too. Indirect consumption is all the water you need to build, to construct, to produce all the good you consume every day in your everyday life. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, all the smartphone, computer, etc. They all have a water footprint. How do you compute this? I try to give you a simple example. If we take like a cookie, you have a flour, you have chocolate, you have vanilla from Madagascar, and to produce all this product, to grow all this food, you need water in Canada for flour, in Madagascar for vanilla. And when you eat this cookie, in fact, in some way, you consume all this water, and you have an impact on water in every of these countries. Some of them are in red in this water risk index. And you have an impact too. I don't say stop eating cookie, but just have some insights on this. And you have some insight, like Christelle mentioned it, clothes, like a jean, which is a huge impact, meat too, and other manufacturing goods like computers, smartphone, etc. I'll give you Mathieu.
Yes, just to hold the concrete actions that you can do as individuals. Firstly, I think you have to understand your environment. You have to know where the water that flows from your tap is coming from, who is responsible of it in terms of quality, in terms of quantity, who produced it, who distributed it, etc. Who are the other users of your area? Is it industry, farmers, etc.? Secondly, you have to measure your water footprints. Alejandra is going to send you a link maybe after the conference.
Yeah, I'll put it now.
To help you compute your water footprint, because knowing it is the best way to act wisely. And finally, we hold 3 concrete measures. Firstly, on your direct consumption, you have to know that 1 minute of shower is approximately 20 liters of water. So if you reduce every day, if you reduce your shower of 1 minute every day, at the end of the year, you will save 7,500 liters. This is approximately 10% of your direct consumption. So it has a huge impact. Secondly, on your indirect consumption, you can change a little bit your food. You have to know that meat meal is 3 or 4 times consume 3 or 4 times more water than a vegetarian meal. So if you replace 1 meat meal by a vegetarian meal every week, at the end of the year, you will approximately save 40 liters on your 40,000 liters, sorry, on your indirect consumption. And finally, the last action that you can do is about the clothes industry, the textile industry. You have to know that it's one of the biggest consumers of water in the world. So with fast fashion, we tend to overconsume clothes, and you have to know that this has a huge impact on your water footprint. So if you want to reduce it, you can stop buying fast fashion and reduce your global consumption of clothes. And we estimated that it will enable you to save like 100,000 liters per year. For those who are not convinced about the water argument, think that reducing your water footprint is also good for your wallet. So maybe money is a better argument. Thank you.
Thanks, Mathieu. And we did our math. We said, okay, what if all AXA employees would use the shower by 1 minute? And this would be the equivalent of a small city of 1,000 inhabitants for a full year. So it's quite something when you think of it. For AXA partners and for the rest of the world. All right, now thank you all of you for this. Time for the Q&A session. You can either put your question in the chat or raise your hands, or here in the room there is one mic, So we are like a bunch of people, so thanks for coming. But don't be shy. I guess we're very lucky to have like experts on water. So more than happy to take questions on this. All right, we have our first question. Well, while this process alone won't, of course, prevent our global water crisis, I wonder if, given that water makes up about 71% of the Earth's surface, desalination is not the solution to our growing demand for clean, safe water. Anyone wants to take this one? Yeah, and go for it.
Well, I understand the question was, is desalination of the problem solution, because we have so much salt water. Desalination produces fresh water. That's a good thing about it. But it consumes huge amount of energy, and it's also very expensive. If you would calculate how much your vegetables would cost if you use desalinated water for the real price, because sometimes it's offered for not a production price, then it's really a very expensive technology. And in addition, it also produces a lot of pollution. It's a brown. It's a byproduct that you cannot. But there's still not a very clear solution. Okay, what do we do with that? You cannot just put it back in the sea. So it's a technology with definitely lots of limits and side effects that are not so good for the environment.
Thank you, Anne. Well, not so many questions in the chat. Maybe I ask one. It's a very. I wonder, if there's any best-in-class country that maybe you have seen, in your research. We heard about Israel. I guess there's some pressure, on the way they consume water. They have their own challenges. So I'm wondering, if you have some best-in-class countries, that could not inspire us, but I guess every country has its own challenges. But I'm curious about this. Anyone wants to take this one? It's not an easy one, I guess.
I was just going to guess that the best-in-class country will be the one who lack water first, maybe, but they will also need resource to adapt. So that's probably a small pool of countries. So I don't know.
I can add on that. Unfortunately, not from my region, but I have from information that I went to Australia. And I saw some places where they actually have this severe droughts, and they try to close the cycle and in the water. So they have a great pond that they take care of it because of diversity, and everything that is connected in the basin to it. It takes care of the nutrients and the pollutants, so they don't use anything that will be a problem. And all the cooling system, it's enclosed, so it tries to. It's in a small scale, of course, but it shows that at least it's feasible. If we start somewhere, right? It at least with the local government in Australia.
A question maybe to you, Hydros. It's figures related, so you let me know if you have any idea. No pressure. We have a question from one of our colleagues, Mark. Thanks for your question. So, is work from home or working from the office? What is less consuming water? If you know.
I have no idea of numbers that with the difference between working from home or working from the office. I think it's something that can be computed. Maybe we can do a little calculate it maybe later and transmit you.
All right. So maybe Anya.
Yeah, maybe it depends how much coffee you drink at home and in the office. What is more stimulating for coffee?
So we should stop the free coffee here. Not free coffee. We have 2 coffee per day here for free. So maybe you need to get back to 1. No? We got many friends, I guess, in the room. Sorry about that. In the room, any question, guys? Don't be shy. Yes, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Yes, one question. We have already a net zero alliance to fight against climate change. is there any water alliance existing, fighting for the water resources?
I'm sure there is something, no? I don't know. Good question, Emmanuel. We need to do our Google research. And you know that?
Water Alliance?
Yes. Or any alliance, I guess, of corporates or stakeholders that are working together towards a common goal, I guess. UN driven, maybe, I don't know.
There are definitely alliances of stakeholders at national level, and for instance, for Europe, there's Water Europe, which brings together partners in water in Europe. There's an International Water Association, which also brings international water professionals together. And then you have hydrologicals. Yeah, in the science, you have also a lot of hydrological societies and so on. And then at the UN level, you have, for instance, the UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, which unites all member states in sharing scientific knowledge with governments so that there is a better science-based decision-making. And then there is also the World Water Quality Alliance, also with representations of stakeholders, citizens, scientists. It's also very, very broad. Everybody is welcome. But they dig deeper in the water quality problems and jointly sharing knowledge and new approaches. So there are probably more, but so that there is. But I think from a citizen alliance, I don't know to what extent that really exists from really bottom up where everybody can join. That I'm not so aware of.
Well, we'll have a go, I guess, and then we'll come back to you. All right. Any last question before we close, either in the room or in the chat? Don't be shy. That's all right. Anyway, I think we are right on time. Nobody? Yes, no? Last call? No? All right. So a big thank you to our speakers today and for coming us to visit for Anne from Belgium. I know you had a busy agenda in Paris, but thanks for coming and joining. Same to Christelle and to our address, Mathieu Valentin. This was our webinar number 2 on sustainability. So we'll continue in the coming months. So please stay connected and we will share some material with you guys to deep dive these topics on water. Thank you all and speak soon. Bye-bye.